Hey everyone, and thank you for checking out this video. So today I'll be continuing with my Child's Play franchise series review and ranking. In my last video I did the original Child's Play from 1988, and today I'll be reviewing, of course, Child's Play 2 from 1990, which I also have on Blu-ray here, as you can see. So yeah, before I get into my spoiler-free thoughts and review on this one, I'll just kind of go through the setup and premise of it. So, Child's Play is in a 1990 American slasher film. Um, it's written by Don Mancini, this time directed by John Lafia. Um, of course, Tom Holland directed the first one. This one's John Lafia, who is one of the co-writers of the first film. So basically, the plot follows Charles Lee Ray, better known as Chucky, of course, continuing his pursuit for Andy Barclay, who was placed in foster care and transferring his soul into him after being resurrected. So that's basically why he's after Andy, is to try to transfer his soul into Andy's body. So that's basically the gist of the film. The film stars returning from the first film Alex Vincent as Andy, um, Jarrett Graham and Jenny Agutter, and Andy's foster parents, and Christine Elsie as Kyle, who's his foster sister, and of course Brad Dourif returns as the voice of Chucky. Um, so yeah, basically, I'll just kind of go into how the movie starts out. It's 2 years after the defeat of Chucky from the first movie. The Play Pals Corporation, which produces and makes the Good Guy dolls, basically recovers and reassembles the doll's remains. If you remember the first film, the doll was blown apart and charred at the end of the first movie. So they get a hold of that stuff and basically reassemble it. Basically, to assure, I guess, their stockholders after negative publicity from the murders that they wanted to put this doll back together to reassure them. But of course, during the process, power surge occurs, and one of the assembly line workers is electrocuted. And Mr. Sullivan, who's the executive of the company, orders his assistant to cover up the accident and dispose of Chucky, unaware that the accident has revived the doll, has basically revived Chucky's spirit within the doll. Meanwhile, Andy Barclay is now 8 years old, has been living in a foster care ever since the murders. His mother is in a mental institution, who we don't see in this movie, having been pronounced mentally unstable for supporting Andy's story about Chucky at the end of the first movie. So Andy ends up going to live with these foster parents, Phil and Joanne Simpson, who are fostering Kyle as well, a cynical, street smart teenage girl, again played by Christine Elsie. Um, Chucky soon discovers Andy's whereabouts by using the assistant's car phone to call the manager of the foster center. And he ends up hijacking the assistant's car at gunpoint, suffocates him with a plastic bag, and then reaches the Simpson home to, of course, pursue Andy again. So yeah, that's basically the setup and the premise of the movie. Simple enough, it would seem. I'll just kind of go into my thoughts and spoiler-filled review of what I thought about this movie. So overall, I thought this was a really solid sequel to the original Child's Play from 1988. Child's Play 2, very solid. It still has a lot of the same creepy atmosphere throughout the movie. Um, this one's definitely more of a horror slasher, I would say, where the first one was more of an American horror film that had a little bit more mystery in it. This one, there's not really a lot of mystery. We kind of know what's up. We know who the killer is and what his intentions are. Um, so definitely more of a slasher film, which as a result, that means there's a lot more kills in this movie, more gore and blood and creativity in this movie as a result of having more kills. Um, Brad Dourif again as Chucky is he might be even better than the first film just because he's got more dialogue and his combination of humor and just owning this character is at an all time high. at least for the first two movies. He's just really rock solid. He owns the character. Great one-liners in this movie, and he's also more menacing, I would argue, than the first movie. There's also pretty solid performances again by Alex Vincent, as well as his sort of co-lead Christine Elsey, who plays Kyle. I think those two are really good, and they have a good chemistry, and they end up developing a good relationship, and sort of teaming up to try to take on Chucky at the end of this movie. There's a great third act in this movie. I think the third act is better than the third act of the first movie, partially because of the location that it takes place in the factory itself. This the Play Toys toy factory, where all the good guy dolls are created. Um, but it just feels like the stakes are even higher, because there's a scene in this movie where Chucky, of course, tries to do what he did in the first movie, which is possess Andy and transfer himself into Andy's body, and then he realizes it's too late when he has a nosebleed and is still in the doll, and he basically just goes crazy and is out for blood. And at the same time, Andy is also out for blood. There's no more. This is what Chucky told me to do. He wants Chucky dead and buried and gone, basically. So, but the stakes are high on both sides, which really adds to the tension in the third act of the film. Um, Great suspense and a fight to the death is how I would describe the third act. I think the practical effects are actually really good in this movie, better than the first movie. They hold up better. It looks a little bit more realistic. There's also a nice transition from the end of the first movie to the beginning of this movie. They don't just gloss over what happened in the first movie and not give us any explanation. It kind of let us know where the characters are at through exposition, but it works within this story too for this movie. So that was really good. As I said before, the chemistry with Kyle and Andy seems real and genuine. They make a good team. The camera work again is really good in this movie. There's good shots, particularly there's a panning shot of that leads to Chucky at the bottom of the staircase, when he's gotten to the Simpson household towards the beginning, towards like the last of the first act of the film. Um, it's really effective. I think the soundtrack and the score is better in this movie. I mean, Child's Play's never been known for its score, but in this movie, it complements the tone that the movie is going for really well, I think. So, yeah, a lot of positives in this movie. As far as any cons, I don't think it's quite as well directed as the first film. I mean, it's not terribly directed, but I don't think the direction's quite as solid as Tom Holland's direction. This movie is definitely less of a mystery and a story. I mean, it's definitely more of a true slasher movie. Like, you know, I mean, there's a great tagline on this movie that sums it up. Sorry, Jack, Chucky's back. So unlike the first movie, we know that Chucky's back. We know he's evil and he's the one killing people. There's less of a mystery there, and it's a straight on slasher movie, which that's not necessarily a con, but it is what it is. I don't think the characters overall are quite as strong in this movie, other than the two co-leads and Brad Dourif. I think like the foster parents and even the foster manager at the foster care facility, I don't think are terribly strong. I mean, they're not awful, but they're not great either. There just seems to be more throwaway characters in this movie. One thing I noticed in this movie more than the first one, there's a lot more conveniences for story's sake, um, to kind of move the story along. Like, for example, towards the right before the third act, when Kyle, after taking Andy back, Chucky ends up killing the foster folks, his foster parents, and then Kyle's left to take him back to the foster care because of course, they all figure that Andy's the one doing the killings again, just like the first movie, and she basically, while she's on the swing, ends up discovering in their backyard the Tommy, the original good guy doll that was in their Simpson household because they've adopted other kids throughout the years, was buried there. And so then, of course, she stumbles upon it kind of by accident. And like I said, just a lot of those sort of horror conveniences. I mean, this isn't the first movie to have them, certainly not the last either. But those are just things that tend to pop up to move a slasher movie or horror movie forward. Um, I don't really know why they decided to rebuild the Chucky doll, um, to to clean up the charred part and put the. I mean, I know they were trying to, like I said, put their, as I said at the beginning, they were trying to put their state stockholders of the company at ease. But I mean, why would you need to literally take the doll that was charred and blown apart in the first movie to rebuild it again? It's just another horror convenience. But those are small nitpicks from my point of view. The other little one is we never really find out what happens to Chris Sarandon's character from the first movie. We do the mom, but again, it's just a small nitpick, just some continuity things there. But yeah, that's really all I got. Overall, this is a really solid sequel, one of the better horror slasher sequels to any original slasher movie or horror movie. I'm going to give this film a 9 out of 10 overall on my rating. Child's Play 2 from 1990, really solid film, 9 out of 10. Go ahead and comment below if you've seen this movie, what you think of it. Like this video and subscribe to this channel to see my continuing reviews of the Child's Play franchise throughout this month, as well as other reviews. I want to thank you for watching and have a great day. Bye.